Hello everyone, I am Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IS English. In our today's video, we'll try to understand why is Jammu and Kashmir still a union territory and not a state in Union of India. Now, the reason why we have picked up this topic for our today's discussion is because of the time we are living in. Now, yesterday was 5th of August 2026, and exactly 7 months before that, on 5th of August 2019, the government of India did something transformative. It used its power from previous constitutional orders and Article 367 of the Indian Constitution to abrogate Article 370. Now, Article 370 was a temporary provision in the Constitution which extended special constitutional status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. So, abrogation of Article 370 meant that those provisions of Article 370 would no longer remain applicable to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, the consequence of this abrogation was that many other related articles like Article 35A of the Constitution, which provided special rights to permanent residents of Jammu and Kashmir, would get nullified. But this was not the end of it. The government of India also decided to reorganize the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories. First union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which will have an elected legislature, and another union territory of Ladakh, which won't have any legislature. Now, naturally, this matter reached Supreme Court under the question of whether the actions taken by Union government on and after 5th of August 2019 in Jammu and Kashmir were constitutional or not. And no surprises there, the Supreme Court actually upheld the constitutional validity of all these administrative actions and said that at the earliest possible time, the Union government should try to restore statehood in the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and even the Union government has promised it. So we are here to understand that despite its promise, why hasn't the statehood being restored in Jammu and Kashmir even till today in 2026? Now, the notes which I will be using for our today's session, you can also download them by going to a particular Telegram channel called as ATS Live. And while you're at it, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Okay, so let us start our today's discussion by understanding, first of all, why was it necessary to abrogate Article 370? Now, I told you Article 370 of the Indian Constitution was a temporary provision which extended special constitutional status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. But incorrectly, it was interpreted by many in Kashmir, which was the idea fermented by many people living across the border in Pakistan, that Article 370 was a bridge which connected the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir to the Union of India. And if Article 370 won't be there, Jammu and Kashmir would no longer remain a part of India, right? So this idea that Jammu and Kashmir's integration with India was only conditional and not complete, it fermented a idea of separatism that many in Kashmir thought that it was up to them to decide whether they want to remain a part of or they don't want to remain a part of Union of India. Now, this kind of an idea became very dangerous because organizations like Hurriyat, they used to use this excuse of protections of Article 370 as a excuse to do anything that they wanted, to extort anything that they wanted from center as well as the state governments. So in order to get their demands met, Hurriyat used to frequently undertake cycles of mass agitation, which was aided and supported by complete ecosystems where hartals took place, shutdowns happened, street violence happened, and all of this routinely brought a normal day-to-day life in Kashmir to an abrupt halt. Now, this also meant that the societal and economic development of Kashmir was very much well behind to the rest of the country's socio and economic indicators. But now, let us understand what is Jammu and Kashmir in 2016. It is very different, which is characterized by quiet streets, arrivals of tourists in plenty numbers, cultural festivals, and even there are many instances of Kashmiris singing national song and national anthem with ritualistic fervor without any force, which was not the case before 2019, because even if you wanted to sing it, there was a fear that somebody would kill me because of the terrorism activities, right? Now, this idea of separatism that was fermented in the ideas of many Kashmiris for decades, also resulted into cross-border terrorism. And this idea of separatism, which was a byproduct of unemployment because of the lack of economic development and direct consequences of the activities taken by Hurriyat, was used as an excuse by handlers of these people living across the border, that was the Pakistani army and its inter-services intelligence agencies, in order to promote terrorist activities in India. Now, all of this meant that because of Article 370, the coordination among many state agencies responsible for defense of India was not adequate, and they were not able to aggressively crush any terrorist activities going on in the state. So it was very necessary for the Indian state to remove this protection in order to counter, in order to tackle this menace of terrorism with effectiveness, with efficiency, right? And as a result, when you see after the revocation of Article 370, terrorist networks have been disrupted, organizational sinews of violence, which was a norm, have now become an exception, and all of this has been dealt with ruthlessness by Indian defense forces. Similarly, many of you would continue to say that yes, even today targeted instances of killings happen in Kashmir, which was seen by last year's killing of Hindu people in Baisaran in Pahalgam. But please understand, terrorist activities, killing of honest Indian citizens in Jammu and Kashmir was seen as a norm before 2019, where people of Kashmir, people of rest of India traveling to Kashmir, and Indian security forces personnel died because of these terrorist activities. But this was norm before 2019, and now after 2019 this has become as a matter of exception. So this is how the game of narrative, how the Overton window has shifted, where Indian government and its agencies have gotten a free hand in order to deal with these terrorist activities, which is a byproduct of abrogation of Article 370. Similarly, if you remember, Article 35A, I told you it got nullified because of abrogation of Article 370. Now, in many parts of the country, just like in Kashmir, there are some special rights given to permanent residents of those areas, like people living in scheduled tribes areas where the scheduled tribes are in majority, right? And it is not bad for them to be provided with special rights. But special rights given to permanent residents in Kashmir also meant that same Kashmiris, a section of Kashmiris who were marginalized, did not have access to these very same rights. For example, women in Kashmir who married outside Jammu and Kashmir faced discrimination when it came to their access to property rights, where normal Kashmiris, their permanent residents, got ownership of land, access to government jobs and educational institutions as a matter of right, but these very rights were not extended to women. Same were not extended to those refugees who had migrated to Kashmir after partition. So this meant that people of Kashmir or different sections of Kashmir were not equal in the eyes of law, and this betrayed the idea of equal citizenship which extends in rest of the country. So government, through abrogation of Article 370 and nullification of Article 35A of the Constitution, ensured that these distinctions are removed, and there became the idea of equal citizenship, which was made also applicable in the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Similarly, the consequence of separatism and the protections which were invariably provided by Article 370 led to emergence of nexus between civil society organizations, between political parties and its leaders, some politicians and bureaucrats, and all of them created a long entrance networks. And these long entrance networks meant that the benefits that the central government provided to Jammu and Kashmir for its economic development were cornered for their personal gains only by a handful of people through extension of patronage and corruption. And this also meant that the governance and delivery of developmental promises were not getting enough. So in order to improve governance and deliver developmental promises on ground directly, it was very essential to remove the middle layer, that is the local interference. So these were the positive developments that has happened with abrogation of Article 370. But there is one more positive development which you may have not understood right now. Let me help you understand it. Now, when Article 370 was abrogated, it was seen that the government actually wanted a political realignment as per its own wish, right? So It is what the government actually wanted. But what happened after abrogation of Article 370 and the delimitation that happened in 2024, for the first time the election happened to the Union Territories Legislative Assembly, and then the party that came into power was National Conference, probably the oldest party in the valley. Right? So this meant that the government's actual political wish through abrogation of Article 370 did not get completed. But does it mean that the democracy has ended in Jammu and Kashmir? Not at all. And this shows you the beauty of Indian democracy. When one political party is in power in center and its ideologically opposite party comes into power in Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and still the electoral democracy in Jammu and Kashmir flourishes, which is exactly opposite of what is happening in the across the border of LOC in the illegally occupied area, that is Pakistani occupied Kashmir. Now in India, democracy is not contingent on your likely political party winning election or not, right? But it is not the case in Pakistan. In Pakistan, the governance structures are manipulated according to whims and fancies of the Pakistani army and ISI. Any mass uprising has been repressed violently in order to repress any kind of democracy to be provided to the Kashmiris living on the other side of LOC. But on this side, democracy flourishes. Yes, ideologically opposite parties are in power in center and in Union Territory, but still people of Kashmiris are getting benefits. Coordination between these two levels of government is happening, right? So this is the unsaid victory of Indian electoral democracy in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. But still, let us try to understand, why has there been demands of restoration of statehood? Everything is hunky and dory in Jammu and Kashmir. Why do we need statehood in Jammu and Kashmir? And there are very good reasons for that. So in here, we need to understand what is the legal status of Jammu and Kashmir and how is it different than other states in India, right? So Jammu and Kashmir right now is not a state, it is a union territory which has an elected legislature. So whenever there is an elected legislature, like in Puducherry, like in Delhi, other union territories, the exercise of power is actually divided among many stakeholders. So on one hand, there is a lieutenant governor who is directly appointed by the center and is in charge of the administration. On the other hand, there is a chief minister who heads the union territories cabinet, and all of them are directly elected as a part of the legislative assembly of union territory. Then, to take matters of defense and other objections, there are union government. So it creates an overlapping sense of authority which is presently discharging different functions in the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and this is not ideal. Because the person here who is directly accountable to people of Jammu and Kashmir is the chief minister, and normally any chief minister in a democratic federal setup like India should exercise all of its powers, because only after exercising all of its power he would or she would be able to provide governance, and for the next time when they approach the voters, they would be able to seek votes in the name of work that they have done, right? But here, the government of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir does not have the power to legislate or administrate on matters of police, public order as well as land, because all of these powers are exercised by lieutenant governor who is appointed by the center. So the accountability, which is very much essential in a democracy, that is accountability of elected representatives to the people of India or to the people of that area, is not been able to be exercised in the Jammu and Kashmir, and this is the biggest problem. Why do we need to restore the statehood at the earliest possible time? But this is not the only problem. The second problem is the levels of economic development. Now, when the abrogation of Article 370 happened, it was seen as a matter which would increase the levels of investment and economic development in the Union Territory, right? And rightly so, even the investment proposals actually increased. But this increase in proposals did not lead to actual increase in private investment, nor it led to growth of manufacturing in the state. Now, you need to understand, a major chunk of economic activity in Jammu and Kashmir is provided through tourism. But tourism on its own does not have the capacity to provide jobs and necessary economic development for a state or a union territory, that is Jammu and Kashmir. To provide employment to a larger section of people, a larger section of youth, development and prosperity of manufacturing sector is essential. And this is not happening in the state. And as a result, you will see unemployment in the region remains close to twice the amount of that of national average, right? Now you need to understand unemployment in rest of the country is an economic and a social issue, but unemployment in Jammu and Kashmir becomes a political and national security issue. Why? Large number of unemployed graduates in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir would give a way to Pakistani handlers in order to ferment the idea of separatism. This would help them ferment the idea of radicalization, right? So it is very much interest of India's national security that the levels of unemployment should be reduced in Jammu and Kashmir. For that, you need a government who is directly accountable to people, and they should be able to promise to the people certain developmental projects. And if they are unable to do so, the next government would come in and do that, right? So this would lead to frustrations and radicalization, and that is why restoration of statehood is very essential. Now the third part is restoration of the society of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, because of the terrorist activities that was going for greater part of 2 decades in the Jammu and Kashmir, it led to continued exile of Kashmiri Pandits. Now, unless a section of society that has been driven out of Kashmir is not able to come back, you can't say that the normalcy has come back to Kashmir, right? So, for a normalcy to come back, you need to ensure that Kashmiris return to the state in safety and dignity, and by that I do not mean that you have to settle them in segregated colonies and provide them with employment packages. Any return of Kashmiri Pandits to the society of Jammu and Kashmir should be completely voluntary, and it should also mean that they are able to reclaim the political, cultural and educational and social space that they had vacated in the first place, because Kashmir is not Kashmir without its Kashmiris, and a section of Kashmiris also include Kashmiri Pandits. So whenever all the sections of Kashmiri societies are able to live in harmony without any external fear, then only we will be able to say that the normalcy has returned in Jammu and Kashmir, right? So this is why restoration of statehood is very essential. But now, let us try to understand why has there been a delay in restoration of statehood. There must be some very solid reasons, right? So let us try to understand that. First of all, you need to understand here geopolitics come into play, because Jammu and Kashmir is unlike any other Indian state. Jammu and Kashmir borders with 2 of India's adversaries, that is Pakistan and China. And whenever Pakistani army gets an upper hand in external international relations, it takes this as an idea or a certificate in order to ferment troubles in Kashmir. And Indian government is well aware of that. Now, in order to counter all of these terrorist activities that are fermented in the state with active aid, finances and support from across the border, Indian government desires to be able to control the entire security matrix with extreme and precise coordination, which means the collaborations with Indian Defence Forces, that is Indian Army, Central Armed Police Forces, intelligence agencies like Intelligence Bureau. It should be able to operate in the area with impunity, with active aid and support of Jammu and Kashmir's police and administration. And all of this requires that the job of this coordination should be given to one political entity, which is Government of India right now, right? Because of its strategic military deployments, because of its close coordination, India is able to deal with cross-border terrorism, and this is only happening because Jammu and Kashmir right now is a union territory, because if it were to become a state, the police and administration would get transferred to the government of Jammu and Kashmir, which was earlier the problem, right? So in order to constantly maintain a direct vigilance, in order to have a direct oversight over the security matrix, it is much more essential that the normalcy should be returned, the security situation must stabilize, and then only afterwards the statehood must be restored. And the second problem here is the administrative reforms that the government has done. Now, since 2019, several administrative reforms have been implemented. First was extension of central laws and new domicile rules. Then it was followed with panchayat and local body elections. Then happened delimitation of assembly constituencies, and ultimately assembly elections were held in 2024. And the central government believes that these constitutional and administrative changes that they have made in and after 2019, they need time to become firmly established, so that if the statehood is returned and some another ideologically opposite parties comes into power, they are not able to undo these changes, right? So in order to prevent undoing of these changes, the government favors restoration of statehood, would, if done too quickly, would disrupt this transition, and this should not be done, right? So these are the reasons why statehood should be provided and why it has not been provided up till now. This does not mean that statehood won't be provided. It is not a matter of if, rather for Jammu and Kashmir, statehood is a matter of when it is going to happen. Okay, now before we try to solve a question that has appeared on roughly the same lines of the discussions that we had today, there is an important announcement. If you are serious about your UPSC exams, you can take admissions to StudyIQ English batches. English batches right now are offered in English evening slot. If you want to take admissions for 2027 or 2028, just go to our website. Before making the payment, if you apply this code ATS Live, you're going to get maximum discounts on all the courses. If you have any problem, just feel free to reach out to us. The number is flashing on the bottom left of your screen, 7640003000. Give us a call and give them my reference. They'll help you out. And before we wind up, this is the question that I'd want you to solve. This is from the UPSC Prelims 2013. It's an easy question. You'll be able to solve it. Please let me know the correct answers in the comment section. And the ones who are waiting to download the notes, you'd find it here on the Telegram channel ATS Live. So this is all from my side for today. Please have a very good day. We'll see each other again quite soon.